It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce and Michael. I know a ghost story or two. Let's do this.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club, the show where we talk to amazing guests about their personal paranormal histories and share stories of high strangeness. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
And usually with us is our super producer, Riley Bray, but he had to step out into another dimension for the week. So with us in his stead, we have Mr. Ryan Countshouse, who is from Campfire Media, and he's filling in for us with his baby, Mr. Baby.
Yeah.
Mr. Baby's in the studio today. You might hear a little baby in the background.
Goo goo gaga.
So this episode this is an episode that's for UFO nerds, okay? We get into the thick of UFOs with one of our favorite guests, friend of the show, Ryan Sprague, who is an author and a podcaster. He's a ufologist. He hosts the show Somewhere in the Skies podcast, which Bryce and I have both been on.
Big fan.
Yeah, and he's been on the show before. So this episode, we talked to him about all the latest updates in the UFO world.
Yeah, and then we go through a little primer on what's good UFO material and what's not so good UFO material.
You know, because like you guys may have been listening to this for a long time. You might be new, and you still might be like, how do I get into all this stuff? Who should I read? Mm-hmm. What should I pay attention to? So we get into some of that in the second half of the show. So here we go. This is our conversation with Ryan Sprague.
Enjoy.
Hey, we got Ryan Sprague on Skype. What's going on, dude? How are you?
What's up, guys? I'm joining you from New York City this time. I was in LA last time, so I apologize if there's any subway noise in the background. Literally a block from the train.
I like the subway noise. It's ambiance.
We like a little atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely helps. I think, Bryce, last time I had you on, there were trains galore. So yeah, we're getting used to it.
All good.
What did LA do to you? Why did you have to leave us? There aren't UFOs in New York. They're all out here. Come on.
It's so true, man. There's like, when people ask me like, well, why do you live in New York if you're a UFO, investigator or researcher? I'm like, well, I do have a life outside of this too. And that life seems to err on the side of New York City. But hey, any chance I get to come out and visit you guys is a treat. I miss LA a lot. I can't lie about that.
Well, you're always welcome. And, let's jump right in. For our listeners who probably know who you are and those who don't, Ryan Sprague is an incredible podcaster on all things UFO. He hosts and created the podcast Somewhere in the Skies, as well as wrote the book Somewhere in the Skies. And we want to sort of talk to you today to fill our listeners in on sort of what you've been up to and what's going on in the UFO field.
Yeah, I think it's been a year since you've been on the show, Ryan. So a lot has happened, I feel like, in Bryce won't stop talking about stuff that I don't totally understand. So we thought, who else better to bring us up to date with everything in the world of ufology than Mr. Ryan Sprague?
Yes.
So, yeah, well, thank you.
So what's going on right now? What's the latest?
Oh, man. What's the latest? Where do I even begin? I mean, I don't even know if the last time we talked, I think sort of the whole New York Times story thing had already broken, obviously, but it has gained a lot of traction since then. So for any of your listeners who aren't too familiar with that, I think it was late 2017. I don't know if you want me to get into this.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good way to catch people up. That was right when we started the show.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, so this was December of 2017. A story broke in the New York Times written by, noted UFO researcher Leslie Kane and a few other authors as well, Ralph Blumenthal being another one. Mm-hmm. And, this story broke that the Pentagon had been investigating UFOs secretly or covertly for almost 7 years or so, I want to say.
Yeah.
Under the guise of the Department of Defense. So this is pretty crazy. We were told that the government's official investigation of UFOs ended in, I believe it was 1969 with Project Blue Book. And ever since then, we thought, oh, the government's done looking at this topic. But little did we know they had actually been investigating it pretty much up until today. This program is still going on inside the Pentagon. But yeah, it's been pretty crazy since then. It's just blown up, and UFOs have seemingly gone mainstream. So as a UFO researcher, I mean, this is a dream come true for someone like me. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's been trying to catch up with that article and unpack everything that was in it. And, there's you thought that, or at least I thought it would lead to some pretty quick answers. But I think those who in the UFO research field know better. It's only led to what seems like more questions and more open cans of worms and stuff. But it's a perfect segue from the author of that New York Times article, at least one of the three, Leslie Kean. And Ryan, you've had some incredible guests on your podcast recently. I really enjoyed the one that you had with Leslie Kean herself and Diana Walsh-Pasulka. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was, I don't know how that came to be, but it happened, and I was super excited. I'd never had Leslie Kean on my show before. And again, for those who aren't really in the UFO know, she's kind of a superstar in our field. She is the one who has written for the New York Times many, many times about UFOs. She wrote a New York Times best-selling book about UFOs, where she interviewed government officials and military people and commercial pilots about their own UFO sightings in their own words. So this is the woman who literally broke one of the biggest stories ever about UFOs.
Now, had she been writing about UFOs before this whole thing came out, or was this something that since she broke the story she's been following up on?
No, she's been researching the UFO topic for decades.
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
if you go back and look at her early work, she worked a lot with Bud Hopkins, the famed alien abduction researcher.
Of course, Missing Time.
Missing Time, exactly, man. I mean, she was a big part of that early work looking into that topic. And yeah, she's one of those researchers who really just put her head down and did the work. She wasn't looking for fame or to be on TV or write a million books. When UFO facts came to her, she wrote them because those are, facts are facts. You can't really argue it at that point. So she's, again, just one of the most amazing people in the field. And then Diana Walsh-Pasulka is another one who, within the past couple years, came out of nowhere and wrote this amazing book called American Cosmic, where she spent some time with people in the aerospace industry and members of what we sort of coined the invisible college. Now, these are scientists in every facet you can think of, whether it's the hard sciences or the soft sciences, investigating UFOs kind of in the shadows. This topic still has a stigma behind it when it comes to the scientific community. So these are people who are looking into the topic, have investigated it, have found some really compelling evidence. And Diana put them in a book, and so we now know about these people. And she also is a professor of religious studies in North
which
Carolina.
is incredible. One of the opening sentences of the blurb of her book, American Cosmic, reads, "More than half of American adults and more than 75% of young Americans believe in intelligent extraterrestrial life. This level of belief rivals that of belief in God." So I thought that was so crazy. There seems to be some sort of maybe paradigm shift in people's, belief systems.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, this is the basis for what could become a new religion. I mean, we've looked at UFOs in the past. You look at stuff like Heaven's Gate cult and other sort of religious movements that stemmed from UFOs. You look at the big one, Scientology. It's straight up just UFO related.
Yeah.
So whether it's good or bad.
To be fair, they've done a lot of good things for John Travolta's career.
Yeah, that's true.
This is true. This is very true.
So they're not all bad.
Yep.
We did get Look Who's Talking too, so.
and Battlefield Earth. Let's not forget.
You're right. You're right.
So yeah, it's been really interesting to look at the connections between the work Leslie Kean has done and Diana Walsh-Pasulka and get them together. They've never actually done anything together, whether it's articles, books, or anything. And it was fascinating. I was honored to get them together in a digital room and just have them hash it out.
It was an incredible interview, and I highly recommend anybody listening to this to go to Ryan's podcast and find that episode. It's one of his recent ones, and listen. It's really an incredible one.
Oh, thanks, Bryce. I appreciate that, man. It was all my honor, and I hope people will take something from it for sure.
So, what did you come away with from that interview, from those two people who are exploring this UFO topic from their perspective? I mean, I was really fascinated in sort of their parallels into people's spiritual beliefs with angels and demons, and the UFO discussion and aliens, and how it all sort of melts together. But what did you take away from that interview, Ryan?
Well, one of the big things that kind of surprised me is exactly what you mentioned, Bryce, was this idea of religion seeping into how we investigate and look at UFOs. I mean, of course, we can look at it many, many different ways, but both Leslie and Diana agreed that the people investigating UFOs within the Defense Department or even the CIA got involved. Members of these people looking at it, they have their own belief systems, so that's definitely going to bleed into their work. So they did start looking at it from either a demonic or angelic angle. If these people were, fundamental Christians or Buddhist or whatever religion you may have, it definitely will paint your perception of these phenomena. So I found that fascinating that even at a governmental level, we have people's beliefs in either God or gods affecting the work that they're doing. So you try to keep that separate, but you just can't, because UFOs at the end of the day are a belief system. Yeah. We have the nuts and bolts side of it where, yes, we're seeing physical craft or possibly occupants, but then you have this whole other baggage to it that comes with religion. So I found that fascinating that both of them, the people they've talked to, whether it's in the aerospace industry or science or the government, how their beliefs affect the work moving forward. So again, it's a sociological and cultural experiment before our very eyes. So
if the Pentagon could start a program where they train suburban pastors on how to locate, track, and defeat alien invaders and UFOs, I think I'd be willing to come back to the Presbyterian Church. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I think if you want to make Christianity exciting for the 21st century, this is the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, who's to say the Vatican isn't behind all of this and they're just doing a rebranding, as it were? Who knows? But who knows?
What's the idea here about angels and demons and aliens? Is it the idea that extraterrestrial phenomenon is what's behind sort of angels and demons, or that angels and demons are the UFOs and aliens themselves? What are we talking about here?
I think a little of both, and I know that's a passive answer, but I mean, you look at something like the ancient alien theory. I recently spoke to a guy named Rami Romani, who's a Egyptologist, and I flat out asked him, this is a dude who contributes to the Ancient Aliens television show for the past 18 seasons or whatever they've done. And I asked him straight up, I'm like, as an Egyptologist, when you're looking at this topic, do you really think that aliens built the pyramids? And he had a really good answer. He's like, look, there are a lot of misnomers or misconceptions when it comes to the ancient alien theory. What I'm here to say is that the Egyptians, when they built the pyramids, they were getting messages from a divine inspiration and to tell them to build these structures and this, that. So it's like, so if you're talking about something non-human or not from this plane, this earthly plane, in essence, it could be what we consider extraterrestrial or alien. So not flat out little gray men came down and helped them build the pyramids, but we find it so hard to separate religion from this topic. So
and especially when it comes to the pyramids, I mean, those lined up with star literal stars in the sky. Those pyramids were like, weren't they all part of the like Sirius constellation? Like, weren't they supposed to line up exactly with like Orion's belt or something? I mean,
that's Robert
I can't
Temple's
remember all
work,
this
I
stuff,
think, or something, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. You guys are you're on the nose with that. Yeah, I mean, the way that these things were built and positioned is just the mathematics alone, and the geography and everything involved is just astounding. And I don't think we can strip these cultures of that.
You can get a lot more done when you don't have Candy Crush to distract you.
That's a good point, man. Could you imagine if we threw an iPhone back in the ancient Egyptian times? We probably would be nowhere.
Oh, we wouldn't make it to the Dark Ages.
Nope, absolutely not.
Listen, I think mankind has been in contact, and when I say in contact, I don't necessarily mean in a nuts and bolts sense, but I think mankind has been in contact with these higher intelligences or divine intelligences, however you want to coin that, for thousands and thousands of years, not only back in Egypt's time, but during the Renaissance and even here and now today.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's amazing how long this topic of UFOs has just been a part of our culture. And what fascinates me most is how ridiculed it still is up until today. So now that you have this new side of it, this angle from the Pentagon that this could possibly be a threat to our skies, now we're going on a completely different side of it.
Yeah.
We're talking nuts and bolts craft interfering with our pilots and could cause national security damage. So it's again, UFOs they blow my mind. Every day I wake up, I'm like, what's going to happen today? So keeps me going.
So what's happened since this article came out? The Pentagon said, yes, we've been studying what they called UAPs, right? Unidentified aerial phenomenon. That's kind of the new term for UFOs, I guess. Now, I remember like around this time last year, the Navy came out and they're like, yeah, we've seen stuff too. We keep hearing about this Tic Tac UFO or Tic Tac craft. Like, has the Navy come straight out and said, yes, aliens exist?
No, but that's the Navy. I mean, they're never going to have a strong stance on that, in my opinion. But what they have said and what they're, the people involved with this Tic Tac event have said is we have absolutely no idea what else this could be. Mm-hmm. I mean, these Tic Tac craft that these people witnessed. I mean, I personally spoke to the radar operator during this event you're referring to, the Tic Tac UFO of 2004 on the Nimitz carrier for the Navy. This dude said on his radar, it was literally raining UFOs. These things were just coming in as a fleet during a training exercise that the Navy was doing.
How big are these crafts supposed to be? This Tic Tac. Why do they call it a Tic Tac craft?
It's literally shaped like a Tic Tac, this oblong-shaped white craft, no wings, no sign of propulsion, just floating over the water.
The spearmint one, not the orange one that you like.
Not Mike. I like the Simpsons flavor.
Yeah, no,
ones
that ain't happening.
Just bright yellow.
Yes, so imagine the spearmint one just floating midair,
but not the size of a Tic Tac. I mean, no. I'm asking really dumb questions here, but like they're what, the size of a Prius? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with probably a Prius or so. At least that's what the pilots have said. I mean, these things, they weren't motherships of any kind, but they were definitely rivaled the size of our fighter jets up there. And they're dropping right to the water and then going up, thousands and thousands of feet. Thousands of feet within seconds.
And
so
they're not trying to like attack this naval cruiser. They're just showing off.
Yeah, I mean, they did not have any sort of weaponry that we've surmised from what the Navy pilots and witnesses have told us. But I mean, that alone, the fact that they're just there and doing these maneuvers, it really depends on how the pilot is going to react. That's where the real danger could come in. Is it going to fire at this thing? Is it going to try to chase it and run out of fuel? I mean, we have cases in the past where pilots have tried to chase a UFO, run out of fuel, crash in the ocean, and we never see these pilots again. This is documented stuff. So I do think the threat aspect when it comes to these UFOs actually has a lot more to do with us than what we're actually looking at.
You mean the threat to ourselves in terms of how we react to these things?
Absolutely. These guys said, if things got more hairy during this 2004 event, we could have started another war. It really depends on what the UFO was, why it was there, and how we react to it.
That's a perfect segue for me, extraterrestrial war, into the next person of interest I'd like to talk about. And I want to play something for you both here. Listen close. I'm going to play it over my phone and through the microphone. Let me know what you guys think.
Oh, what was that?
Oh, hold on. Here we go.
Skip those ads.
What's happening here?
Oh, my God.
The question is often asked, when will UFO disclosure happen?
These lights, they keep coming together.
The answer is, it has.
The New York Times revealed the existence of a secret government program to investigate UFO sites.
It's a very complicated story. I have put a briefing together for every president since Bill Clinton. Interplanetary war. This is the next big thing that they want the public to be afraid of.
This is a national security imperative.
We must have American dominance in space.
But it's all a lie.
The national security state. They want to establish a planetary government by spinning that this is a threat.
One set of facts, two narratives.
Are we just doing free advertising for documentaries now?
Yeah, it's almost over.
Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols developed by Dr. Greer is the most dangerous information he has released to the public. Human-initiated communication with extraterrestrials is possible.
All of us are going to know the truth. This is our moment.
We have the ability to change life for the better.
Consciousness isn't limited by space and time. What I'm doing with CE5 is the foundation for the relationship between humans and these extraterrestrials.
The implications are absolutely profound. That shows consciousness does affect reality.
A critical mass of people can shift an entire civilization. But the intelligence community don't want the public to know. They say, what's in it for me? It's easy. A new world, if you can take it.
Yeah. Michael's shaking his head. He's like, what are you doing? But, hey, man, can't leave Stephen Greer out of the conversation.
No, you cannot.
That was a trailer for his new movie, CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, out for digital release in April.
Yeah, I just want to say for the record, we're not officially promoting this documentary.
No, but you know what? It's definitely, it brings into so many things we were just talking about, like portraying this as an alien threat, talking about consciousness, and also talking about how to communicate with these quote unquote extraterrestrial entities.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Where's Stephen Greer at in this UFO conversation today?
Well, first of all, who is Stephen Greer? I think would be for people.
We just have to assume our listeners know who Stephen Greer is by now.
Not everybody does. So, Ryan, why don't you give us just a little bit of a background on Stephen Greer, and then before diving
because
into
we've
this.
only done 100+ episodes,
but not everybody's listened to the whole backlog, dude.
So Stephen Greer is a professional wrestler. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, the dude's jacked. We can't get past that fact. He's a big guy.
He is ripped.
Yeah. That being said, what I know of Stephen Greer is what a lot of people out there know him mostly for is he put together this thing called the Disclosure Project really early on, I'd say the mid-90s or so, where he brought together government officials, people in the military, and brought them to the National Press Club in Washington and had them talk about UFOs. And this was huge. This was probably as big as the New York Times article, if not bigger.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we do have him to thank for that, but this is what happens in the UFO world when someone gets so big, so quick, and this is the same in Hollywood, then it all starts to unravel, and you got to constantly one-up yourself. So now we have a guy who put together this amazing thing at the National Press Club, and now he's out charging thousands of dollars in the middle of the woods to shine flashlights up and vector in UFOs.
Have you ever done anything like that? Because, I mean, some people have reported, at least a couple people I've talked to, they've reported, some good success on those type of ventures out there in the field and seeing things at night. What is your take on all that?
I can't strip away from people's personal experiences. If they experienced that, I was not there, so I can't judge that. So when it comes to something like that, the CE5, as he calls it, like a close encounter of the fifth kind, I'm assuming this is contact with
human-initiated contact, yeah.
Right. That's tough. I've never personally had that experience. I've had a lot of people come to me and say they have initiated contact with these extraterrestrial beings. So, again, I have my personal thoughts on Stephen Greer and the way his work has gone and what he's promoting in terms of, an alien invasion of sorts. But
yeah, he's a controversial character.
He is.
That's sort of
gotta shake things up.
Do you mind sharing some of those opinions? Because I think that one of the things, and what we're going to get into a little bit later in this episode, is people who are interested in this stuff, including me. There's so many personalities out there. There's so many takes and so many people saying, I know what's going on with this phenomenon, that I think it's hard sometimes for people to find a way in and know who to pay attention to and listen to, because for me, I watched the Unacknowledged documentary that he did a couple of years ago on Netflix, and there's lots of really fascinating stuff in that, but then it always takes a turn where it kind of suddenly veers into this
New World Order, free energy.
New World Order, the government's out to get you. There's clips of Alex Jones and like the World Trade Center conspiracy stuff, and then I'm like, okay, I feel like I've been suckered into a very like alt-right or far-right conspiracy theory. I kind of came for the UFOs, and now I'm getting pulled into this narrative that I think is more harmful than good. That's my opinion. And, I'm just shaking my head because when Bryce was playing this documentary, I'm being very tempted here to get on my, and so I'm going to avoid that. But I'm interested in what your opinion is, because you're somebody who is steeped in this world far more than certainly than I am. I think definitely more than Bryce is.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so if you don't mind opening up and sharing your opinion, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, here's where I land in terms of these, I guess you could call them UFO celebrities. They have been given a platform to reach a lot of people. I mean, there's no arguing Stephen Greer's work gets out to the mainstream unlike any actual UFO researcher ever truly could. And that's a sign of good business. So, I mean, as a businessman, he knows what he's doing. But I agree with him. I think there are bits and pieces you can take from everything you hear about UFOs and form your own opinion. I don't. If somebody's telling you, I have the answer to UFOs, and if you watch my show or my documentary, or you pay this much to go out and vector in a UFO, that's where I say run for the hills, because it's very clear what the motives are behind that. That being said, again, Stephen Greer has done some incredible work, and he paved the way for a lot of us to be able to talk to military officials about this stuff. So yeah, we live in an age now in 2020 where there have been congressional hearings with senators and congressional members about UFOs and the Navy talking to these people. So that's amazing. And we can't deny that Stephen Greer had an early influence on that happening. So,
well, and isn't even the UFO documentary like pizza? Even the bad ones are still pretty good. Like,
Yeah, but I just think you have to be careful. There's a lot of sensationalism out there, and there's a lot of again, look, I've said this repeatedly with this show. I love the stories, I do, and obviously I'm someone who leans more into the believe it than bullshit category on most of this stuff. But it's when things start telling you to get scared that I have a real fucking problem with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because who's the
absolutely.
authority there to tell me what the hell's really going on? These people, nobody, because I keep coming back down in an agnostic point of view where like nobody really knows what's happening with this stuff.
I think all three of us agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And anybody who says they do know, like, again, that's where I say run as fast as you can, because
it's like,
yeah, the government doesn't know, the military doesn't know, and the public doesn't know. So that's it in a nutshell. That's what UFOs are. They continue to be unidentified, and they continue to mystify us up until today.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Another great guest that you also had on Somewhere in the Skies is MJ Banyas. Am I saying his last name right?
I believe it's Banyas. I could be wrong on that. But,
right. Well, he is the blogger of Terra Obscura and a journalist par excellence. But that was another incredible episode, and I believe you guys were the focus of your conversation was none other than Skinwalker Ranch. Is that right?
Yeah. So, I recently had MJ on to talk about going there. He's one of the first people since Skinwalker Ranch. For any of your listeners who don't know, I know you've talked about this specifically on your show.
Yeah.
This place in Utah where a ton of paranormal stuff has happened, UFOs, cryptids, supernatural, everything you can possibly think of happening on this one ranch. And to sort of tie it back, Bryce, to the secret Pentagon UFO program, we now know for a fact that most of the money allotted to this Pentagon program went to studying Skinwalker Ranch, which is insane.
It is. It all sort of circles back to it's crazy when the more you start to research this stuff, you start to go around in circles and see somehow it's all connected to these big articles and these big stories and players that we've been talking about for so long.
Right. And I mean, MJ, working for Vice News, he was able to get to the new owner of the ranch. The ranch was sold after Robert Bigelow, the billionaire, bought the ranch, studied it, came out on the other side being extremely mystified by what things that happened there, and then eventually selling the ranch. And now the new owner, the first person he's let onto this ranch to sort of cover what's now going on was MJ Banyas. So I thought it was a fascinating interview. If anyone wants to check that out, it was a few episodes ago on Somewhere in the Skies, but we do get the inside look of what is now happening at Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, go check out that episode. And I'm looking at MJ's Vice article right now, and he actually gets a quote from the new owner of the ranch, and I want to read it now. Facing the reality of our mortality is sobering. The anomalies at Skinwalker Ranch, the things that have been reported there over decades, if not hundreds of years, they seem to attest to the fact that we live in a strange universe. Perhaps we're not alone, he said. Salt Lake City disappeared into the distance. Perhaps there's more than meets the eye. The nature of our existence, our physical reality, is much more complex. The nature of our consciousness and our place in the cosmos. It's funny to think that people are still asking the same questions that our species had been asking for thousands of years. I think the opportunity to take a living laboratory like the ranch, a place that seems to be the center of gravity of so much of the unexplained, is a unique experience. And I just love that quote because I don't know about you guys, but I think where all this is headed is consciousness. And I think that's the new key player in this game. What's your take on what the new owner of Skinwalker Ranch is saying there?
I think you're right, Bryce. And I come from sort of a very nuts and bolts background when it comes to ufology. Like, I want to see that craft. I want trace evidence. But, I released another episode with Leslie Kane recently about another book she wrote about past lives and the afterlife. And
you're talking about surviving death.
Yes.
Yeah, incredible read. Yeah.
It really is. And it's not a topic I ever thought I would cover on a UFO podcast, but I do find it starting to really bleed over, this idea that what is consciousness? Can it be separated from the body once we die and move on to another shell, as it were, or another plane? Again, this is stuff that was far beyond, my grasp of reality, and something I never really looked into until I had the person who wrote the New York Times bestselling book on UFOs and now another book about consciousness.
Wow.
Connecting them. So when it comes to that quote in the Skinwalker Ranch article and the work I see some of the most credible journalists out there tapping into, I can't deny that there is a huge consciousness aspect to UFOs. Could it be that this is the only way we do get that CE5, as Stephen Greer talks about, and contact with these other beings? You know, maybe we can't communicate with them on a vocal or auditory level, but maybe consciousness is the only way we're ever going to figure out what the hell's going on in our skies. I don't know.
I mean, do you ever feel that? I mean, being a UFO researcher for so long, you get the idea that we've been talking about nuts and bolts crafts ad infinitum, and it's just like we've explored all the cases, and where does this topic go next, you know, and how do we keep moving it forward to get, I mean, because what's the end goal here when we're researching this stuff? It's to really find out, you know, what's taking place, you know, who are these entities, where do they come from, you know, what is the nature of reality? I mean, isn't the goal of doing this research to try and get to some answers?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all want answers, and it always, you know, it's very sobering when someone like the late Stanton Friedman, one of the, you know, longest running UFO investigators ever, passed away recently. And that really hit me. And it was really unexpected. I thought this guy investigated UFOs for half a century of his life.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that he went to the grave not getting the answers he probably wanted in life, we can only hope that he's getting them now in whatever comes next. So that's a really profound thing that I came across is, you know what, maybe within our lifetimes we're not going to know what UFOs truly represent, who's behind them, what their motivations are. But maybe, just maybe, whatever comes next, we will find those answers. So I do see the research heading into a very different way that it has in the past, and consciousness seems to be a really big aspect of that. I mean, you look at the work of Jacques Vallée, or even Carl Jung early on in his research into UFOs, is this idea that we are a bigger part of this and a bigger participant than just seeing something in the sky. A lot of work is now being done is how much of this do we actually create in our own minds, our own consciousness? Are we manifesting UFO phenomena? So yeah, it's fascinating. It's a side of all this that I'm just starting to scratch the surface of, but I honestly do think there is something to it. And I'm going to keep looking, man, because, hey, I haven't found any nuts and bolts answers yet. So.
No, but hats off to you, man. I think you're doing more than scratching the surface. I think these long form interviews with these, you know, these wonderful researchers like MJ Banias and Leslie Keene and the people that you're able to talk to, they can really bring the discussion to another level than just having, you know, reading a book or reading an article. I think it's very informative, and I think it can move the topic forward with what everybody's doing in podcasts. So hats off, man.
Oh, thank you. And I think it's very important to challenge ourselves. So if we're stuck in this echo chamber, just like any community or subculture of just talking to one another about the same damn thing over and over, let's open it up and let's get other people involved and ask new questions. So, yeah, I appreciate that, Bryce. And I think that's what you guys do as well on your show is you theorize and you go there. You're not just, you know, you're not just saying a ghost is a ghost or a Bigfoot is a cryptid, you know, a missing link. You're going to what is the next question after that? So.
Actually, we do think ghosts are ghosts. We prove that ghosts exist on this show, so that's a BCC fact. Ghosts are real. All right, we're going to move on to the next half of the show. But before we do, speaking of questions, you know there's a game we like to play with our guests on the show, Ryan, and you've played an earlier version of this, but the list has been updated. This is a rapid-fire game. We're going to go down a list of phenomenon, and if you believe in it, you're going to say believe it. If you don't, you're going to say bullshit. You got it?
You got it, man. Right. I'm sure my answers have changed since then,
all right.
So let's do this.
Here we go. On your mark, get set, ghosts.
Believe it.
UFOs.
Believe it.
Bigfoot.
Believe it.
Alien greys.
Believe it.
Out-of-body experiences.
Believe it.
Demonic possession.
Bullshit.
The Bermuda Triangle.
Believe it.
Alien abductions.
Believe it.
Loch Ness Monster.
Believe it.
Time travel.
Believe it.
Mothman.
Believe it.
Reincarnation.
Believe it.
ESP.
Believe it.
Haunted houses.
You're doing great.
Believe it.
The Illuminati.
Bullshit.
There's a face on Mars.
Believe it.
Skunk ape.
Believe it.
Heaven.
Believe it.
Hell.
Bullshit.
Sea serpents.
Ooh, that's a new one. Believe it.
Poltergeists.
Believe it.
Chupacabra.
Believe it.
Atlantis.
Ooh, I forget what my answer was for that one originally. I'm gonna say bullshit.
Life on other planets.
Believe it.
Parallel dimensions.
Believe it.
The apocalypse.
Don't want to believe it.
Life after death.
Believe it.
Nice job.
Yeah, well done.
Hey, we gotta say, because I think it's our first believe it we've gotten. There's a face on Mars. Most people say what or bullshit to that. So
megalithic structures on Mars, man.
Do you think that there was a intelligent life on Mars before it all went to hell, I guess?
That's a really good question. When I said believe it for that one, like for me, there is the whole thing of pareidoia and everything, but
what's that word?
Pareidoia. It's when you see things out of regular mundane objects or images,
nice.
Right?
Good.
Isn't that right?
That's
something I need to know.
It can influence your perception of what you're looking at. If a million people are saying there's a face on Mars, look, and you see it, that doesn't. It's very subjective. So for me, I saw a face on Mars when I saw those photos. What it is, or who put it there, or is it a natural occurrence? I can't tell you, but I saw a face on Mars there. So in terms of life, I think there definitely was some sort of life on Mars at one point. Maybe there still is.
I had an image of Chupacabra when Ryan said believe it, going, yes.
Yeah, I think you said bullshit last time, so I'm excited to say believe it now. Why the change of mind, I guess?
Well, he must have listened to our episode about Chupacabra with Tom Lank.
Yep, I did. I listened to every episode. But not only that, I also my beliefs have changed a lot in the past year and a half or so since I last talked to you guys.
How so, Ryan?
I just, again, I think it really comes down to empathy and understanding. We live in a world where no one listens to each other anymore. Yeah. So I've really come to a point in my own show where instead of really preparing a point-by-point interview, I just want to have a discussion. And something like talking to Leslie Kane about the afterlife, I went in just being like, all right, let me open my eyes and mind and heart to this, and let's see where it goes. And I had like a paradigm shifting moment. Death is something I never wanted to tackle. A lot of us fear even talking about it. And I came out on the other side more hopeful than ever that, death is just the beginning of something greater.
Love that.
I mean, my mind has just been blown in the past year and a half or so since I last talked to you guys. And whether or not I might have to have you guys rein me in every now and again because I don't want to go too far off the deep end.
Don't look at us.
You're right in the sweet spot. You're golden.
Okay.
That's when I want. That's when the conversation begins for me. Is when someone's going out there. I'm always trying to get Bryce to get a little weirder with me, and sometimes he just drops it on me. And it's a wonderful surprise. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have more on UFOs with Ryan Sprague. All right, we're back from that break. Great break.
Good break.
Really good break. So, Ryan, I've been wanting to have a point-by-point discussion. No, just kidding. I want to have like a conversation with you because you are the person that I probably know that knows the most about this stuff. And, we've done over 100 episodes now, and I realize that every now and then, like the first half of this episode might leave people a little bit in the dark as to exactly like, what are they talking about? You know what I mean? Obviously, we've brought up Stephen Greer. We've brought up the ATIP program. We've brought up, we've talked at length about Skinwalker Ranch. But I thought, who better to ask where to begin? A UFO primer for dummies, or if you're a 15-year-old kid listening to this episode and you're like, I want to get into this stuff. Where do I start? Because there is so much bullshit out there, but there's also, like Bryce pointed out, there, even in the bad stuff when it comes to UFOs, there's really great things to. There's chunks of good pepperoni you can take out of that pizza. So I guess what I want to ask you, what I want to get into is like a UFOs 101, and I think let's start by asking, piggybacking off our conversation in the first half of the show. So we have the Pentagon, we have the Navy. What other branches of the government or military have come out and said we have seen phenomenon in the skies that we do not understand?
I mean, let's go with the Air Force first and foremost. That should be the most obvious one. But I mean, we look at Project Blue Book. I'm sure your audience has at least heard of this. This was an official study by the Air Force in investigating UFOs back, during the 40s, 50s. We had the famous Roswell UFO crash of 1947. We had the first ever report of flying saucers in 1947 as well by a man named Kenneth Arnold, who was flying over the Cascade Mountains and saw 9 crescent-shaped craft fly past him. And he said that the maneuvers were like saucers skipping off of water, and that's where the term flying saucer actually came from.
They were actually boomerang-shaped or more crescent moon-shaped, like you said, or maybe you said that, I didn't, but they weren't actually the shape of flying saucers or saucer shapes.
Batman's old boomerang.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Batarang, yeah, exactly.
But Kenneth Arnold wasn't military. He was a traveling salesman flying a private plane. So in terms of the government itself and what they know, how much have they disclosed?
So Project Blue Book ran for a pretty long time if you're talking about UFO investigations. So the Air Force's final conclusion after Project Blue Book closed and they investigated thousands of UFO cases, 701 cases remained unexplained. Wow. That's huge. That's absolutely staggering numbers of unidentified objects or aerial phenomena still not being solved. Yeah. So when it comes to the Air Force, they decided, look, there's always going to be anomalies in the sky. No, we can't explain every one of them. Could it be aliens? Maybe, but we don't see that. We don't have evidence of that, and we're no longer going to investigate that because it doesn't seem to be a threat to us. Then you find out the Pentagon certainly thinks it's a threat, and they're still investigating UFOs up until today. So that's a way to sort of look at it. The origin of Project Blue Book and the Air Force's look into this, I think.
You know what it sounds like to me is that they just closed the curtains on it a little bit. They were like, okay, I think we're done doing this out in the open. Let's move this to some darker corners of let's keep some of this information to ourselves until we get a handle on what this is.
Yeah, that and probably funding. Administrations change, people switch over, and at some point, I am assuming when J. Allen Hynek was closing up Project Blue Book, there had to be somebody up the chain of command that said, "We're spending money on what?" You know what I mean? We're in the middle of the Cold War. We're in Vietnam. Let's shut this down and reallocate our resources to something else. Because the other thing is, what is there still a stigma around people who see UFOs, Ryan, or claim to see UFOs?
I'm sure it still exists in some form, but we are at a point now where even the Navy in 2020 now has a new protocol of reporting UFOs. So, I mean, that's huge. This comes from a branch of our military that once said, that's, don't report it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the stigma or the ridicule you're going to get. And we also don't want to, we don't want the public to be scared. We are in control of our skies here in America. That's what the Air Force tells us. That's what the Army tells us, the Navy, what have you. So if we had pilots or military people saying, whoa, UFOs are up there and we don't know what's going on, that's a problem. So we have to look at it as, wow, now in 2020, the Navy, the first branch of the military to come forward and say, we are reporting UFOs at a staggering amount and we don't know what they are. That's huge. That's a huge admittance by one of our military branches. So where do we go from there? I don't know.
And that's big because since Project Blue Book and, for the past 30 years, they've just been quiet about it or denied the existence of this stuff?
I think both. I think Bryce is right that the work continues, not in the public eye. Project Blue Book was a very big publicity stunt, I would say. J. Allen Hynek, a famous astronomer, was hired to debunk all the UFO cases that he could to show the public, don't worry about this, military's got it under control, and just go about your lives. When in reality, this debunker turned into a acceptor that UFOs exist. I have absolutely no idea what they are. And then he went on to form his own UFO investigation group. So
yeah, that's right.
It's insane. Like, the guy sent in to say UFOs are bullshit, came out on the other side saying, oh my God, like, this is crazy, and I can't explain it, and neither can my colleagues. So,
by the way, The Bryce is Right is the name of my new favorite paranormal game show.
The Bryce
I
is
like
right.
that. I like that.
Down.
So what did Alan, when Hynek's been dead now for a number of years, I would imagine. Yes, decades now. Yeah. He passed away. Do we know? I mean, someone knows when he died. Let me look it up. Do we know where he ended? Like, what was when he?
Well, Ryan just said he became out, and I've read his biography. He came out a believer that there was more to this stuff than just swamp gas. And in fact, he's the one that sort of coined that whole swamp gas, and it's something that he was a little embarrassed about later on. He's like, all this stuff can't be just weather balloons or Venus or swamp gas. Look, like Ryan said, 700 cases that are unexplained. All you need is one. And to push this thing into, okay, this is something that we don't know, but to have that amount of cases is extraordinary. And Jacques Vallée, the famed ufologist whose work I think we all admire, he was working right under J. Allen and Hynek, and it was through those caseloads where he started to come up with his own theory known as the IDH, interdimensional hypothesis, where he thought these cases were so strange and represented so much religiosity and a time and a place and a culture that it couldn't be coming from some planet out there. Something was happening either in another dimension or something was happening terrestrial on this earth. Something was manipulating or pushing society towards something, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Bryce. Vallée has his own thoughts and theories on all of this. When it comes to Hynek, I mean, I had his son on the podcast a few weeks ago, and I did ask him that very question. Like, well, okay, where did your father land at the end of his life with all this? And he did say, my father never considered himself a believer, but as an acceptor. And I think that's all we can really ask for from an astronomer, someone who based his entire life on the scientific method. And when he came out on the other side being like, everything I once thought I knew, the way our scientific method was came to be and all that, I can honestly say that whatever these phenomena are, they break our method into tiny little pieces. So that really stuck out to me. So I think it's fascinating the work Vallée has done and how he looks at all this, as well as interdimensional or even us from the future. This is another theory coming from a few anthropologists and historians and scientists and futurists right now, is this idea, could this all be us coming back to warn us of something or to send us a message? It's cool.
I always vibed with that, like the little gray alien, like with the big heads and the small mouths I was like, yeah, that could be us. I mean, smarter, bigger brains, eating less.
Less physical activity,
yep. More mind exercise, a lot of mind games.
Just like really bad Nintendo phone.
Right.
I like that he called himself an acceptor and not a believer. Although I will say that bullshit or accept it doesn't have the same ring to it. So
that's true. Yeah.
So what are the different types of? So we have close encounters of the first kind, second kind, third kind, fourth kind, and now I guess fifth kind. So can you break down really quick what those all are? Because that's something that is mentioned a lot, but I don't think a lot of people necessarily know what the different types of contacts are.
Yeah, and who wasn't it?
Yeah.
Who coined that classification? Was that Hynek?
I think it was Hynek.
That was Hynek, yeah.
there you go,
J.
okay.
Allen Hynek coined this, and eventually it got into the hands of a famous filmmaker, Steven Spielberg, and that's why we have the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yep. And for any of your listeners who don't know, this guy we're talking about, J. Allen Hynek, who ran Project Blue Book, or helped run it, was featured in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, since the movie was literally based on his classifications.
He's got a cameo at the end when the mothership comes down. It's pretty awesome. He shows up.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we got Close Encounter of the First Kind. We're talking just seeing something in the sky, you know, whether it's a light or a solid craft. You move to second Close Encounter, and this is actually seeing some sort of possible occupant or intelligence behind what you're seeing. Third, we're talking, close encounter, where it's can't be argued there is something inside that craft, and
perhaps the craft has landed and it's walked out and
it's
shook your
walked
hand.
out. Yep, exactly, man. And then we move to fourth, and that is I would say, an involuntary contact with these beings, whether it's in their craft in terms of an abduction or just, chilling with these aliens. I don't know. And then we move to 5, and that's us making the contact with these beings. A communion of sorts. So it's a pretty convoluted and very descriptive close encounter classification. I really only scratched the surface of it, but if you literally Google close encounter classification system, it gets deep and it gets very specific. And again, someone like Hynek coming from a scientific background, I think that's awesome that we can actually look at these things the way a astronomer or scientist would. So.
Yeah, why does Greer get to add to that classification with the 5? We should come up with a 6, us 3, and then we'd be famous for it too. What would be a close encounter of a 6th kind?
When we podcast with an alien.
Yeah.
But we have to co-host it. He can't just be a guest.
Okay, got it.
And
right.
It's got to be on their planet.
Yeah, and they call the shots.
Yeah.
See if we could schedule something.
So Hynek, you recommend people check out his work. I'm assuming Stanton Friedman. Who are some of the other people in the field that if I want to go to the library and check out a book, who do you recommend?
Definitely Jacques Vallée. Like Bryce mentioned, this dude is just like an amazing guy. I mean, one of the people who literally helped invent the internet in Silicon Valley. Wow. And computer scientist turned ufologist. Anything by him.
And he's kind of like the idea, like Bryce said, that they come from another dimension, where Stanton Friedman is more of the these are crafts coming from other planets through intergalactic or interstellar travel, correct?
Correct, yeah. And I mean, he to his dying day said these are aliens from another planet. Right. So I mean, that's I respect that someone has a firm stance, and Stanton Friedman definitely had that. So
and he's no slouch too. He was like a nuclear physicist, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. I mean, brilliant. The people in the UFO field, I think a lot of people don't realize, they're not all cranks and kooks and cult leaders or charlatans. There are legitimate people, some of the most brilliant minds you can think of looking at this topic. And to tie it back to Jacques Vallée, check out the book Invisible College. Again, these are the smartest people we have out there in every scientific field or academic field, secretly, I should say, or in the shadows investigating UFOs. So definitely check out Invisible College by Jacques Vallée. You did mention American Cosmic by Diana Walsh-Pasulka. Extremely interesting book. I definitely suggest people look at that.
What about Linda Moulton Howe? I've always enjoyed her work. How does she compare?
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking, animal mutilations, Bryce, that's that thing we haven't touched on at all in this conversation.
Love those.
Out in the San Luis Valley and whatnot. Definitely check out her book, A Strange Harvest, I believe it's called. I think it's a documentary as well. And going into that whole aspect to all this. Also, Linda Moulton Howe is the one who is in possession of possible alien materials that were sold to the Army recently.
Right.
Whoa.
So, I mean, we're talking not only have UFOs possibly crashed on our planet, but we have some of the material from them, and she has it. And she now is working with Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy, which Tom DeLonge runs.
How'd she get this stuff?
Same how everybody gets somebody listening to their show sends them something, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's highly anomalous, whatever it is she has. And now it's being looked at by some of the top scientists in the world with funding by the military. So that's interesting, too.
Let's get our piece. If anybody's listening to this and you have anomalous material, send it to Michael McMillan and our P.O. box at Bigfoot Collectors Club.
Yeah. Do it. Do that. Do that, please.
Guys,
don't send me any anomalous materials. Keep that in your own home. So, Ryan, somebody I've wanted to ask you about, because I've been, I guess I want to say, guilty in the past of being of like watching his YouTube videos. I remember one conference in particular, because he would show lots of like wild UFO footage, is Jaime Maussan. And I've heard you say, maybe avoid this guy. Can you explain to me why I should maybe ignore Jaime Maussan moving forward?
Well, and again,
I'm putting you on the spot. I apologize.
No, not at all, man. We have to be put on the spot, or else, where do we get? No, Jaime Maussan is one passionate UFO investigator. It's an interesting cultural perspective when it comes to how UFOs are treated. I think in America, we still have a stigma behind all this, but you go to somewhere like Mexico and this stuff is embraced like nowhere else, which I think is amazing. So you have this guy, Jaime Maussan, who is like literally a god in Mexico when it comes to UFOs. Not he doesn't have a messiah complex, but this guy
he's a UFO celebrity, like basically.
He's a UFO celebrity, yeah, which is cool, I guess. It is what it is, and he brings forth a lot of UFO videos, and most of the stuff he brings forward, though, I mean, you immediately look at it and you're like, oh, that's a balloon, or oh, that's a reflection off of a bird. But to him, and
a bird wearing sunglasses.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, to him, everything's a UFO, everything's an alien. So I may have been harsh.
He's done a lot of those ancient mummy stuff that's kind of very problematic and just turns out to be, indigenous people who have been mummified thousands of years ago and aren't aliens.
Yeah, you want a good story? Tell your audience to look at the Roswell slides debacle.
We did that on we covered that on the other side on our Patreon. We just recently did that.
Yeah. So Jaime Maussan, love him or hate him, he's a big part of the UFO field and the history of it. And again, he, sometimes he's got good stuff and sometimes not. But that's what the UFO field is. See what sticks.
It's like when you say everything's a UFO. There, I'm instantly reminded of the Bigfoot community. Like researchers out in the field. Wait, you hear that? That's a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You see that? You see that impression right there in the sand? That's a Bigfoot.
Bigfoot whistling. Okay, so this is a question I think for Bryce. How do you discern a legitimate like YouTube video of a UFO and some bullshit?
Man, I have to go.
No,
with
I'm saying the answers for you. This is a question. You're right. I said for Bryce.
Yeah, you said a question for Bryce.
I meant this is geared for Bryce to hear the answer.
Oh, okay.
I want Bryce to learn how to tell the difference between a legitimate eyewitness video.
Michael's still mad. I played all of Stephen Greer's promo.
I'm not mad at it. Oh, I'm a little angry about that. But we're not a sponsor. How can you tell a good UFO video on YouTube from a fake?
When it comes to videos, guys, I'm going to be honest. I put little to no stock in them. And at one point in UFO research, that's kind of all we had to rely on were videos. But now in an age where literally anything can be faked and a kid can throw a UFO into a photo on an app on their phone and 1 million people view it, it's hard. I don't know. We can never turn back from that now. So when it comes to video evidence of UFOs, I tell people, hey, okay, look at the source. Like, where's the video coming from? Go to that YouTube channel, see what else is going on there. Can you reach out to the person who posted it and find out, exactly when this happened, where, and then go investigate it from there? Otherwise, you've got Here's a good example. I had someone send me a video a few weeks ago that they said, "Oh, this UFO was seen in Turkey a few weeks ago. What do you think of it?" I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. I saw that video posted about 12 years ago, and it took place in Iran, not in Turkey." So, I mean, that's the problem.
There's
where are these things coming from?
There's videos like that and Bigfoot stuff like that on like Instagram and accounts we follow. It's like, look at this intriguing Bigfoot photo, and you're like, okay, but where is this from? There's just so much garbage out there that it
what I do?
Frustrates me.
I just trust my eyes, Michael. And like when I see, just Google Russian girl levitating, and you can immediately just get a sense.
You're right.
Of, I mean, that is real.
You know what? You're right.
And that is, you got to trust your eyes.
I'm sorry I ever questioned
you. Your eyes don't lies.
To wrap up, Ryan, and what cases hold the most merit for you? What are the cases you lean on as like, okay, there's something to this phenomenon?
Oh, I know I talked about this on a past episode of yours. The Tehran, Iran incident of 1976 is like my golden nugget when it comes to, hey, you're interested in UFOs, go look at this. I mean, it was the first case I ever filed a FOIA on and got actual documents back from the Defense Intelligence Agency about a Iranian pilot chasing a UFO in Tehran and having a dogfight in the air with this thing. And then our own CIA intelligence agencies got involved with it. We were leasing our planes to Iran at the time, so we wanted to know what was outflying our planes over there in Iran. So that's a case I highly suggest people check out. I'm going to have a very extensive episode on that event coming up pretty soon on my own show.
Us too.
Yeah, we filed FOIs
yeah, we're
too.
Gonna do that too.
We got some FOIA requests in.
We're going to do that too.
On some stuff. Russian girl levitating. I'm really trying to get to the bottom of that.
Dude, Bryce, I love how adamant you are about that Russian levitating video. I know which one you're talking about, and it's scary as shit, man. I'm not going to lie.
You know what? So's Hereditary. All right. Well, Mr. Sprague, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
They can find me at somewhereintheskies.com. Just same podcast is on there. Everything I'm up to. Check out the CWC to watch Mysteries Decoded, a show I contributed to. Other than that, I'm on all social networks. You can find me. Just type in Ryan Sprague.
Awesome.
Yeah, guys, if you're interested in UFOs, this guy gets some of the best guests to talk to. Go check out his podcast. It's hands down one of the best.
If you want like a smart UFO podcast, go listen to this one. Don't listen to this. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ryan. We really appreciate your time. And of course, we will always find you somewhere in the skies. Thanks, dude.
I love that. Love it.
Thanks, Ryan. Wow.
Amazing conversation with Ryan.
That guy's so knowledgeable, man.
I could talk to him for like 2 more hours.
Yeah, I mean, that was cut short for sure.
Well, that's because you're hangry and we got to get you lunch.
Yeah.
You gave me the hangry eyes. Before we go, guys, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Bigfoot Collectors Club. I'm at McMills. Oh, God, just bash my knuckle.
And I am at Mr. Bryce Johnson, but I'm on a social media hiatus, so...
That's fine. People don't need to know that.
They kind of need to know that.
Fine. Just follow him anyway.
Why isn't Bryce responding to my...
Also, Riley Bray is on Instagram now, at Peace Drone. And guys, we want to let you know that we have a show coming up very soon, March 23rd at the Bigfoot Lodge in Los Feliz. It's Monday, March 23rd. I believe it'll be about 7 p.m., maybe 7:30. Check the Instagram. But that's a free show, 21 and up. So make sure to come out and see us if you're in Los Angeles that night. Okay, that's great. Until next time, I remain Michael McMillan for Bryce Johnson and Riley Bray. Good night.
And go get regressed. Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced by Riley Bray. Our theme song is Come Alone by Suneaters, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. If you like the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps get the podcast to more listeners. To support the show, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Bigfoot Collectors Club and unlock multiple reward episodes every month.